Welcome everybody. Welcome YouTubers to another video. And please like, subscribe, and share our videos so that others may be blessed. And today we're going to be talking about the beast. We're going to be talking about how God's people eventually were deceived not to keep the commandments of God. And this all started way back in the mountain of Sinai, where God spoke and talked to the house of Israel and gave them the 10 Commandments. And this was the lifestyle that God wanted them to live. Eventually, things started to change. If you read the book of the prophets, you'll see that the prophets, God gives them messages, and God tells them the people of Israel are sinning. They are not keeping the commandments that I have given them. They are not living the lifestyle that I have told them to. But this took time. It took a lot of time. It didn't happen overnight. So God said to the prophets, like Jeremiah, he says, well, you know what? You're going to go into captivity. You're going to be ruled by someone else because you refuse to obey me. And it happened. So Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, was the first king to rule over the house of Israel. Along with him ruling over the house of Israel, they had their own gods they worshipped. They had their own religion that they practiced. So the people of Israel, they didn't want to be slaves that were treated really bad. So a lot of them adapted to the religions of the Babylonians. And the Babylonians, they were pretty strict. They wanted everybody to follow their religious practices. And in fact, just very few of them did not. They continued to follow God's ways. And Daniel was one of them. And Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And his dream was that there was this statue, this image of a man. Huge image. It had the head of gold. It had the arms of brass, of silver, the belly and the thighs of bronze, and the legs and the feet and the toes were partial steel and partial clay. Iron and clay. So every one of these was going to be a kingdom that was going to rule over the house of Israel. So in Daniel chapter 2, verse 28, it tells you the story about the image. And in Daniel 2:38, it tells that Daniel was giving an interpretation of the dream, and he tells Nebuchadnezzar in verse 38, chapter 2, that Nebuchadnezzar is a head of gold, that God has given him everything as far as he can see. But he did interpret the dream, and he says, but there's going to come another kingdom that's going to be less inferior to yours, and it will rule until the end of time. So there were going to be 3 more kingdoms, and one had to conquer the other. So in Daniel chapter 5, verse 28, there's a message written on the wall. Nobody could interpret the message, but they summoned for Daniel, and Daniel says, they told him, if you can interpret this message, we'll give you, part of the kingdom. And Daniel says, no, you know what, keep your, whatever you're going to give me. It says, the interpretation is that your kingdom shall be divided and given to the Medes Persians. So this is the second kingdom, and along with it comes a new religion that is put upon the house of Israel, because your new rulers are expecting you to abide by their worshiping and their gods and their statutes. So, here you go. The house of Israel is being changed, being forced to change, or death falls upon them. And they have to make choices. Just like we have to make choices. Everyone has to make choices. But as we continue, every kingdom has to conquer the previous kingdom. And in the book of Daniel, you don't find the third kingdom or fourth kingdom. Daniel only lived through the first two kingdoms. So you have to research in order to find the other two kingdoms. There's some books called the Apocrypha, and they're in some Bibles, and those are extra books that it's from the prophets that are also given unto us as scriptures. But some of these, like the King James, the English didn't find any inspiration in some of these books, or they wanted to omit information because they felt that based upon their beliefs that some of these information that we shouldn't be receiving. So you have to, in one of those books is a book of Maccabees. And in the very first book of the book of Maccabees, the very first chapter and the very first verse, it talks about Alexander the Great, how he conquered the Medes and Persians. Along with that, Alexander the Great, he was from Greece. He brought a new religion. All those gods that they have, Zeus, Poseidon, and these gods, they brought those gods and put them upon the house of Israel, and they wanted them to worship those gods. This is the third type of religion that was put upon the house of Israel, and they had to change a lot. And a lot of times it was death. So, but nobody conquered Alexander the Great. In fact, he went and conquered all the way to Africa, but he died. And when he was going to die, what he did is he divided his kingdom into his top 4 generals. And out of one of those generals rose the territory of Rome. So in Maccabees chapter 8, verse 1 through 6, it says that the Romans were beginning to be powerful, and that they were conquering all the lands, and that the Jewish people were, making covenants with the Romans, and the Romans eventually came and ruled over them and settled some of their high authority in Jerusalem. And during the time of Jesus, it was the Romans that ruled over the house of Israel in Jerusalem. Now again, the Romans had other gods. And the Romans didn't really push that the Jewish people had to keep the Roman religion, but a lot of them did, but they allowed the Jews more freedom. So, but as you could see, that all these people that were ruling over the house of Israel, they all had to a different religion, different practices, and they all influence God's people. So then, God warns us. God warns us. Now, the Romans, which were the last kingdom, they had 2 types of world rule. There was iron and clay. Now, the iron, they were described as a Roman army that used iron swords. But the clay is a soft rule, because Rome existed and then Rome fell. But when Rome fell, then a new kingdom arose, and it was a religious kingdom, which is still in existence today, okay? And God warns us about these religions. And it says in Revelation 12:17, and the dragon was mad with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So the devil is still making war with the remnants of those people that continue to keep the commandments of God. You can expect that devil to be attacking those people. But we need to discern, and we need to find out that this is truly what we're looking at, what we're facing, and how we can overcome this, okay? So in Revelation 13:4-8, and it says that this beast, this false religious entity, covers the whole world. The Roman religion is covering the world. But not only is it, a lot of people say, well, I am not in the Roman Catholic religion. I belong to so-and-so religion. It's okay. So in Revelation 13:4-8, it says that it covered the whole world. But 13:9, it says, if any man have an ear, let him hear. So if you've been following our videos, you'll see that one of our videos is about he who has an ear, let him hear. And it means that if you were in the mountain, on the bottom, one of the sheep, and you were listening to the voice of God that was on top of the mountain, he gave you the 10 Commandments. And in order to discern these religions, you needed to be informed, taught the 10 Commandments by the descendants of those people that were there. One of those commandments, again, is the Sabbath day. If those religions that have been a part of the rulers that rule over the house of Israel, and they do not keep the Sabbath day, those are the religions that God is talking about. Because God didn't make any other holy day or worship day other than the Sabbath day, which he made on the 7th day, the day of rest, and he made it holy. But these other religions, they don't follow God. They want to do their own thing. But the Roman Catholic Church is an entity that was going to spread throughout the whole world. It was going to influence so many people that it influenced most of God's people, which are still under the mark of Rome, okay? So in chapter 13, verse 16 through 18, it tells you about the mark of the beast. And it says that no man may buy or sell. This is going to influence everybody, rich or poor, sick, not sick. It doesn't matter what statute you have in this world, you are going to be affected, okay? And it says that no man may buy or sell unless he has the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is sin, okay? We've learned throughout our videos that the mark of the beast is sin, okay? So if you buy on the Sabbath day, okay, this law is not going to be given by the devil. It was given by God. Every man is supposed to rest and not work on the Sabbath day. So if you buy on the Sabbath day, that means that somebody is working. If somebody is working and you buy on the Sabbath day, you're approving that somebody else to work on that day. And God forbids this to happen. So you sin. That's the mark. In verse 17, in chapter 17, verse 4 of Revelations, it gives you the colors of the beast, which is the colors that is worn by the popes today. If you look at those colors in Revelations and you look at the colors of the Pope that they wear and the cardinals that they wear, you'll see that those match. But in 17:5, it says that this beast is the mother of harlots. That means that there's other religions that are going to be coming out of there, that came out of Rome. The Protestants, the Lutherans, you know, there's the Baptists. There's just many, everybody wants to make their own religion, but they all worship the beast. In other words, they all practice the same way as Rome does. And God says that in chapter 17, verse 9, it says, the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth on. Well, Rome is the only city in the world that sits in the middle of 7 mountains. So we know that it's Rome. We also know that these other religions that came out of Rome are the religions that God is warning you about. And it says, and this is going to affect the whole world. And God says that he's going to destroy these religions, and he's going to destroy everybody in them. In chapter 18, verse 4, it says, come out of her, my children, my people, and be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. So I ask you today, make your choices today. Follow Jesus. Keep the Sabbath. Make sure that you are not one of those people that has been deceived. Use the words that God gave you on the mountain to make your decisions, to go out and discern from every church entity that you believe that you want to investigate, to see if it's a godly church or not. I pray that you discern righteously. So today we end our discussion of the beast, and this time frame that it took for God's people to be converted into the sinners, which if it's one of us, if it's you or I. Well, now we know what we're looking for. And now we can make that decision to go and make the right decision and go in the path to follow Jesus and do as he told us on the mountain. Until our next video, Shalom.